In Zoroastrian mythology, the world's end begins with a violent prison break. The ultimate evil, bound for millennia, is prophesied to finally shatter its restraints. That prison is Mount Damavand. For thousands of years, a three-headed beast named Zihak has been bound deep within its rock. But when those chains finally snap, the resulting chaos threatens all of creation. As Zihak rampages across the earth, the foundational elements of nature rebel. According to the ancient texts, fire refuses to burn, and water refuses to flow in his presence. The physical world begins to shut down. The celestial gods realize they cannot stop this destruction alone. They reach back into the ancient past, searching for a champion who has already proven he can do what they cannot. The survival of the universe now rests with a single, slumbering human warrior. This savior is hidden away in a secluded, snow-covered valley. He hasn't died. Instead, he has been kept unconscious, frozen in a magical sleep for thousands of years. The gods take his security seriously. Exactly 99,999 guardian angels hover constantly over the snowdrift to protect his resting body. The man buried beneath the ice is Garshasp, an ancient Indo-Iranian warrior with physical strength unmatched by anyone in history, which raises a massive theological contradiction. If Garshasp is the chosen protector of all creation, why did his own gods actively banish him from paradise? And why did human history try so hard to erase his name? To understand his fall, we have to look back to the Indo-Iranian era. This was a brutal landscape where humans were at the mercy of the elements and predators. Garshasp made his name by making the world safe for humans. He famously battled a massive beast known as the golden-heeled Gandharva, dragging it into the sea and fighting it continuously for 9 days and nights until he won. When a giant, monstrous bird named Kamak spread its wings so wide that it physically blocked the rain from reaching the earth, Garshasp shot it down to prevent a global drought. He even unknowingly set up camp on the back of a sleeping, horned dragon. It wasn't until he lit a fire to cook a meal that the rocky ground beneath him began to heave, forcing him into a deadly, impromptu battle. Early humanity survived because Garshasp cleared the earth of monsters. His physical power and relentless monster slaying elevated him to near-divine status among the people he protected. But that immense power bred arrogance. In a moment of hubris, Garshasp made a catastrophic error. He disrespected fire, the absolute center of Zoroastrian worship, by lashing out at the flames and treating a sacred element like a common nuisance. When Garshasp finally died, this act came back to haunt him. The supreme creator, or Mazd, barred his soul from entering paradise. No matter how many monsters he had killed, desecrating fire was an unforgivable sin. What followed was a highly unusual trial in the heavenly court. The prophet Zoroaster and the celestial angels actually wept for Garshasp. They actively debated the supreme creator, pleading for the warrior's soul. Zoroaster presented a very practical defense. Garshasp was flawed and violent, but without his violent acts, the creation Ormazd protected would have been devoured long ago. Ormazd agreed to a compromise. Garshasp wasn't cast into hell, nor was he welcomed into heaven. Instead, his body was placed into a magical suspended animation, a frozen slumber in the mountains, to serve as an emergency insurance policy for the end of days. While Garshasp slept beneath the snow, the world moved on. Human empires rose and fell, and epic poets began revising the mythological history of the region. The most famous example is Ferdowsi's epic poem, the Shahnameh, written centuries later. The author needed a unifying national story and completely omitted Garshasp's greatest accomplishments. Look at this timeline charting the Indo-Iranian mythos. As the oral traditions split into written texts, Garshasp's specific dragon-slaying achievements, and even his iconic black dragon batter banner, are systematically stripped from his record and reassigned to a newer hero named Rostam. Garshasp suffered a double exile. He was locked out of heaven by his gods and written out of history by his own people. This brings us back to the apocalypse. Millennia pass. Zihak, the chained beast in Mount Damavand, finally breaks his restraints and begins ravaging the earth. Here, the creator reveals a profound final judgment. Because of Garshasp's sacrifice for humanity, he is decreed to be the very first soul resurrected on Judgment Day. Shattering the ice, the ancient warrior is finally allowed to wake up. The slumbering giant takes up his club one last time. He meets Zihawk in the ruined landscape and strikes the beast down, ending the threat once and for all. With the monster dead, the path is cleared for the world to undergo a total spiritual and physical renewal. Having fulfilled his final purpose, Garshasp earns his long-denied entry into paradise. The myth of Garshasp suggests that true heroes are rarely flawless. It argues that moral perfection isn't a requirement for doing great things. Garshasp is a direct reflection of humanity. He makes grave mistakes, falls victim to arrogance, and is forgotten by history. Yet he holds on to a stubborn, immortal spark of goodness that even the supreme gods rely on when everything else fails. So until the end of the world, he waits, a flawed protector resting quietly under a blanket of snow, validating the worth of an imperfect humanity simply by biding his time.